Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Hardwood podcast, your home for all the latest Minnesota Lynx and WNBA news, analysis, and coverage. Thank you for tuning into another episode. I'm your host, Mitchell Hansen, and we're about to get into a big part of the WNBA season, specifically for the Minnesota Lynx, coming up here over the next couple weeks. It's going to be a telling, basically 2, 3, 4 weeks stretch for Minnesota. It's not only going to get busier leading up to the postseason, teams are going to get tougher to face, but also the opponents that Minnesota will be facing, specifically the New York Liberty. Minnesota and New York will face off for the first time Wednesday, July 30th. If you're listening to this after the game, they will have a few more games, actually 3 more games over the next couple weeks. But we kind of have like a mini series here in the middle of the regular season. But specifically with this July 30th game, will be the first matchup since the 2024 WNBA Finals. So that'll be a very interesting stretch for both teams to see if Minnesota can either create more room or in the standings, or if New York is able to kind of narrow things up and kind of make a push towards that top spot in the WNBA standings that has been occupied by the Lynx for most of the regular season. But it'll be a very interesting and telling, I think, couple weeks here, just to kind of use it as a measuring stick to see where these teams are at, and what we might see in the playoffs. Because a lot of people anticipate that Minnesota and New York will have a rematch again in the WNBA Finals this year. They're obviously the two, I think, best teams in the WNBA. They have been all season long. But it'll be very telling to see what happens here in the next couple weeks. But to preview that, I'm really excited to have a guest on that. I think he's the first time Hitting the Hardwood podcast, excuse me, guest. I've chatted with him in other roles in different scenarios, but ESPN's Ryan Ruocco, who is on the broadcast with Rebecca Lobo, Holly Rowe, and the entire ESPN crew. Ryan is awesome. You've heard him in a lot of, if not most of the most iconic moments in WNBA, women's basketball, NBA, MLB history, or at least recent history. But Ryan's awesome. Ryan's a great guy. And we talk about basically the Lynx Liberty matchup, as well as just the WNBA season to this point, what the Lynx and Liberty need to do the rest of the season, what they've done well so far. We also touch on him broadcasting the like I mentioned, the biggest moments in women's basketball and WNBA over the last decade or however long he has been doing it. He's been on almost every call that you all see in replays and highlights. But he is the voice behind some of the biggest plays that we have seen as sports fans, and it's a pleasure to hear him on the call and also to have him on the podcast here. But before we jump into that, I do want to just kind of bring up our Patreon page. That is where you'll get exclusive news, information, early access to different content that you won't get anywhere else. Myself, Terry Horseman with the Lynx Happy Hour podcast, as well as Andrew Dukowitz, who is our newest member to the Hitting the Hardwood family. Him and his The Missing Links podcast. You can find all of that on our Patreon page. You find it all in one location. It honestly, it is a small commitment money wise, but it is a small commitment that goes right to us into ensuring that we can continue to do this and continue to provide you some of this content that we think you deserve. So if you could check that out at patreon.com/hitting the hardwood, that would be phenomenal. Also check out our social media channels. We will have, or as this podcast is dropping, we have a giveaway from one of our generous partners, Homage. We have a Lynx and another T-shirt giveaway. But you can find that on all of our social medias. So go check that out and make sure you participate in all there's just 3 small steps to get yourself entered into the giveaway. And you get a shirt, a Lynx shirt, and another shirt of your choosing. So I have the Lynx shirt and a WNBA shirt, and I wear them every week. I'm a regular wearer of the Homage clothes. So it's very comfortable. Highly recommend checking them out and also participating in the giveaway. So without further ado, let's jump right into the podcast with ESPN's Ryan Ruocco. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I didn't tell you this, but the last time I spoke with you was back in this is I didn't realize it was this long ago, but 2017. I was working for the Lynx, and it was right before it was either right before the finals or right when the playoffs started. But I had spoke to you over the phone, and I wrote something for the team website at the time, and I think it was actually right before the finals because I know I saw you a couple days after that or whatever. But it's
Yeah.
been way too long. Long story short, it's been
Yeah.
long, but I
Geez,
appreciate you joining.
it's hard to believe that it's been 8 years
I
since then.
know.
It does not feel like it. I was thinking the other day about how incredible those finals would
Yeah.
be received in this current,
Mm-hmm.
women's basketball climate,
Yeah.
which, those finals were unbelievable and they got like what was at the time, a lot of attention relative to, kind of what the sport was used to in that moment. But can you imagine like the LA Minnesota series now, especially like with the option of 7 games,
Oh
like
yeah.
oh my gosh, the ratings bonanza we would have experienced. All the Hall of Famers on the floor, and that's it. Like you
Yeah.
think about it, right? Like Waylon, Maya, Simone. I mean, Brunson in my book is a Hall of Famer.
Mhm.
Sylvia,
Still. Yeah.
yeah. Candace, NECA is going to be a Hall of Famer. Chelsea is going to be a Hall of Famer. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those moments where you look back and you're just like, wow, those were the not that these times aren't the good times, but those were the good times. Those were some impressive and it seemed impressive teams, and it seems like they were just it was those two every single year. And it
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, and you
yeah,
guys, we're in the midst of 4 titles in 7 years
yeah,
and 6 trips to the finals. So yeah, that's a that's a dynasty.
yeah.
And when you're in the middle of that, it's you never know how long it's going to last or whatever, but it really is incredible when you look back on that period of time.
It's also weird to see Whalen and Brunson on the coaching staff now. I mean,
Yeah,
it just
yeah,
makes me feel old and
yeah.
like we just saw them play last year basically, but it's been yeah, it's been 8 years, which are 7 years, but that's yeah, time flies.
Yeah, man, pretty wild. It really is.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to dive in a little bit. I know you're going to be on the call here for the Lynx Liberty game on July 30th. But I wanted to take a little bit of a step back and just kind of talk about the 50 States in 50 Days with SportsCenter, and just kind of give you an opportunity to um, kind of describe that and just kind of from your seat how cool it is to see ESPN and SportsCenter specifically, kind of put that all together and kind of travel the country. I know El Duncan will be, who is awesome, will be in Minneapolis before the Lynx Liberty game, but just kind of want to get your perspective on it and what you've thought of it so far.
Yeah, man, I think it's awesome. I love live events. Like I love being on site. I think there's an energy to it that
Hmm.
is really valuable. I think that when you look at the kind of, when you have a studio show, there's a reason why it operates best out of a studio, but there can be a level of you know, uh, a stagnation you can feel, right?
Hmm.
It can lack a certain amount of juice after a certain period of time. There can be a monotony, and I love it. Then when you see a studio show go on site, it provides that break, right? It provides that like, oh, this feels big. Whether it's a studio show going on site for a playoff series or the finals, or in this case, 50 states in 50 days. So I love it, man. I think it gives a cool insight into, each state, different things that are, you know, special to those states, different things
Hmm.
that are unique to those states. I think also like what we see is people have pride in their states and they want to
Yeah.
show off the best or maybe like what, people may not know about it. So I think it's awesome. I love that Elle's, going to be in Minnesota um, and Minnesota is just such an amazing sports state. And so, it'll be no doubt a memorable stop for Sports Center.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the call on ESPN, um, what what's it like for you to be a part of that broadcast team, and also for you personally to be you've called the biggest moments in women's basketball, not just the WNBA, but women's basketball and other sports. But what is it like for you to be a part of that team and also be a part of those big moments? Is you're kind of the voice of some of those iconic moments.
It's amazing, man. The reason I wanted to get into play-by-play was because when I was a kid, I would hear different broadcasters and what they would say would help shape the memory for me as a fan.
Hmm.
So, speaking of dynasties, I grew up a diehard Yankee fan. I grew up with the late 90s Yankees dynasty, and that meant for me a lot of winning, a lot of moments, a lot of memories, and so many of them have a certain call attached to them, whether it was Michael Kay and John Sterling on the radio, or was Joe Buck or Bob Costas calling the different playoff games in the World Series during that period of time. Those moments are etched in my brain forever and really my heart, and I feel them. And part of what made me feel them was the tone, the energy, and the words of whoever was broadcasting them, right? Like listening to Joe Buck, back at the track, at the wall, we are tied, on Jim Leyrit's 3-run homer in game 4 of the 96 World Series off of Mark Wohlers to tie it at 6, like those are the kind of things that, like, when I think of that moment, I don't just think of, you know, the homer, I think of the call.
Hmm.
And some people may have heard me use this analogy before, but I say TV play-by-play is like the score to a movie. You're seeing what's happening, but it's helping it come to life. No
Hmm.
different than the way the Jaws music helps seeing Jaws come to life, right? Like, or hearing the Imperial March makes it feel imposing and threatening when you see Darth Vader. So I love getting to help shape moments and memories for fans because I've been on the other side of that, and I still am on the other side of that for the sports I don't call, right? Um, and uh, and I think when you get to do it in championship moments, that hits a whole different octave of joy and excitement and thrill as a broadcaster. So to get to do that for so many of the biggest moments in women's basketball now for the last, 13 years, it's something that still thrills me. It still
Hmm.
excites me. I get pumped for it. Like the playoffs or big games, it's just like it's a drug to me.
Hmm.
And then when you get to do that, when you get to broadcast big moments with people who you love being around, you love working with, like I do with Holly and Rebecca and our producer Ian Gruca and our director Adam Bryant, it's just it's awesome. It's just
Hmm.
really fun, and I just feel super grateful. Plus, there's a level of trust that things are going to be documented with a level of care and journalistic integrity. And that's something else I feel grateful for that we have that on this crew.
Do you want to get your business in front of a passionate and dedicated fan base? Do you want to support the ever-growing landscape of women's sports? Hitting the Hardwood Network is here for you. We offer partnerships and sponsorships at various levels, including advertising on the Hitting the Hardwood and Lynx Happy Hour podcasts, the Hitting the Hardwood newsletter, Patreon page, website, social media, and much more. If you want to partner or sponsor Hitting the Hardwood, please reach out to us at hittingthehardwood@gmail.com and let's chat about how we can work together to support the ever-growing landscape of women's sports and help the game grow. I want to give a shout out to our current partners here at Hitting the Hardwood and those who help make Hitting the Hardwood happen. Thank you to Pentz Homes, Fantasy Sports Evo, Homage, and Better Edge for your continued partnership and your continued support of Hitting the Hardwood and Links Happy Hour and your willingness to help make the game grow. Do you have, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but do you have a favorite moment or a favorite call that you've had throughout your career? Is there anything that initially comes to mind?
You know,
There's a lot.
Yeah, it's funny because like there's different like this the Minnesota New York series last year was as much fun as I've ever had.
Hmm.
I mean, just because every single game was amazing, and
Yeah.
and you know the my favorite actual call from the series may actually be Courtney Williams' 4-point play in game 1. Like that,
Hmm.
if I was just gonna pull one call out of it, I really love my call of it. It was like the culmination of this insane comeback and set the tone for the entire series, right?
Hmm.
Sabrina's game winner also was up there, obviously. But though that, that series is there, if there's different, like the end, there's a couple moments in Caitlin's runs at Iowa that I really Like she hit a deep three against LSU in their rematch in Albany, where I said like from Schenectady, that like really hit with people like that was super fun. And the end of their when they beat South Carolina, my final call there was like the mythical mastery of Caitlin Clark continues, and I love alliteration, so I
Hmm.
love that one. Um, I think Maya's game winner against Indiana in Game 3 of the finals in 2015 is one of my favorites at the buzzer. But if I'm giving you a bunch of different ones. Like, and honestly, I don't know that like if you just said, oh, just pick one.
Yeah.
I think if there was like just one call and I could only pick one, Aaron Judge hit a home run that almost left the stadium in Seattle in 2017 that I called. And I think it was in 2017 or was it 2018? It was one of those years. It might have been 2018. And and my call like was just like this very organic excitement. I don't know if you've ever heard this or if you listen to baseball at all, but I was just like, good gosh, where is that going to land? Like, and it was just like really organic. And the amount of people who recite the exact words to me, it's amazing. Um, and then for me, actually, like kind of technically, it unlocked what I needed to do mechanically to get excited in those moments. Like I kind of felt like, oh, this is what I have to do to be able to hit these moments. Also established for me that I didn't want like a defined home run call. I wanted to just be able to organically react. So I probably put that one as like if I had to pick one, that
Hmm.
one. But there's so many memorable ones. Sabrina's 3-point contest, like
Hmm.
from a couple years ago, is up there for me. So yeah, I know I gave you a million of them,
Hey,
but
that's all right. I expected that. It's hard to
yeah.
pick just one or
Like
two.
picking children, right? Like
Exactly.
there is no favorite. You love them all.
Right, right. Speaking of the game that I referenced earlier, the Lynx Liberty game, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that matchup. It's obviously the first time we're seeing them since the finals last year, but not only this first game that they're playing against each other, but kind of the we were talking about it before we got on the recording, the kind of the mini series that they have here over the next couple
Yeah.
weeks. What are you personally looking forward to in those four games that are going to be taking place?
Yeah, well, it's pretty wild when you think about that. They haven't played the entire season, and now they're going to play four times in 3 weeks.
Hmm.
From July 30th, our game Wednesday on ESPN, to August 19th, they're going to play four times. Crazy. Um, I think, what is clear, these are the two best teams in the WNBA again. That's clear. Now, Phoenix, I think, they certainly can make a case that, they will if make a run to the finals and they have an excellent chance to. But based on what happened last year and then the way they've played this year, I don't think anybody would quibble with
Hmm.
the idea that the two best teams are New York and Minnesota, just like they were last year. And the seeding as of now has bared that out as well, right? I think what's interesting is regardless of how close they were in the standings, I think you would see a level of intensity, obviously, in these games playing for the first time I think, since they played in the finals. I think there's a sort of like a litmus test that goes on where it's like, okay, we think we're good. How good are we? Where are our flaws? Do you hold some things back for the finals and a rematch? Do you,
Hmm.
deploy everything? Are you trying different things, trying to get intel, trying to guard intel? So there's a lot of chess matches within the chess match that I think will go on in these matchups. But I also think the standings are significant with these games. As much as it has felt like Minnesota has this insurmountable lead in that one seed, when you consider these four matchups, it's not insurmountable because New York is only 2 games behind them in the loss column,
Hmm.
right? If New York was to win 3 of the 4 matchups, all of a sudden they'd have the tiebreaker and they'd be, tied in the loss column. I mean, I don't know how many games each team has between now and then, but tied in the loss column in
Yeah.
theory. And I think we saw last year home court advantage in that decisive game was really, really significant.
Hmm.
So for me, I'm looking at it and saying, hey, like all the pomp and circumstances around this game, the pageantry, that is all fun and exciting. But like home court is really significant for these teams, I think. And how much better would you feel if you're the Lynx and you're playing a game seven at Target Center, right? Like how
Hmm.
much better do you feel if you're the Liberty and you're playing a game seven at Barclays Center? So for me, first and foremost, that's the significance of these games is that, there's an outstanding chance these teams are going to meet in the finals again. There's a high probability it'll be a long series. And if it's a long series, home court advantage could really matter.
Hmm. What do you think of both, kind of looking at both teams to this point of the year? Minnesota hasn't really played, I don't think, their best basketball yet. They've been, pretty dominant on both ends of the floor to this point in the season. But New York on the other side, they've kind of had a little bit of an up and down, but they're gonna improve as the season goes along or as we finish out the rest of the regular season. But I feel like specifically these four games will be very telling for both teams. But also, what are your thoughts on what we've seen from both of them to this point?
Yeah. Now, when New York has played with their starting five, they've been incredible. Now, they lost the other day on the second half of a back-to-back for the first time with their starting five intact this year. I think they had been 9 or 10-0. They had just like pummeled opponents. The net rating for their starting five, I think, was like 40.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, outscoring opponents by 40 points per 100 possessions, just a silly astronomical number. Stewie didn't finish that game, so you could put a little caveat on them losing it. Obviously she's going to miss Wednesday's game, so you're going to still have some curiosity around like, okay, what does it look like when she's healthy? Hopefully she's back for the August 10th game and everybody's healthy so we can get an even, clearer picture on these two teams right now. But I think for New York, look, they have the most top tier talent on one roster in the league, right? Prime top tier talent.
Hmm.
Sabrina's playing better basketball than she ever has before. Brianna Stewart's one of the all-time greats. John Quell, Finals MVP last year, who's looked really good since returning, right? Natasha Cloud has been a perfect fit. Leonie Febish unlocks everything and really was the difference for New York last year. New York's starting five is as good a five-player unit as we've seen in the league in a long time, right?
Hmm.
Um, but they haven't had a ton of minutes together yet this year because of injuries. So I think, you know, at their very best, if I'm New York, I'm still thinking like, hey, we're the best, at our very best. Um, I think for Minnesota, what we've seen is continuity and a revenge tour of sorts, a chip on their shoulder.
Hmm.
They're one highly dubious call away from being champions last year, right? And that was about as razor thin a margin as you could possibly have in a finals. They bring back their core, they supplement their bench a little bit more, and I think they play a beautiful style of basketball. They play a connected style of basketball. They're so well coached by Cheryl Reeve, and I think that the whatever the difference is between the Liberty and Lynx, it's so close that maybe the difference will end up being that revenge motivation for
Hmm.
Minnesota. Maybe we're going to look back and we're going to say that's the reason why they won the finals, because this year for teams that were so tight, that would had to be the difference. So we'll see. But I think like as of this point, both teams have shown flashes of being the best team in the league, right? And Minnesota's been a little more consistent with that.
Hmm. Do you feel like, because we hear this in sports all the time, especially in basketball, that this team is built to beat this other team, and whatever. Let's say, for example, the Lynx are built to beat the Liberty. That's why they constructed the roster the way they did, or they kind of had that in mind. Do you feel like how these rosters are constructed? Do you think they have that in mind? I know there's a bulk of the returners on, the core returning on both teams. But as far as the supporting cast, I know Minnesota's kind of shifted things up just a little bit with some familiar faces coming back, notably like Jess Shepard. They've added some pieces around her and that bench, but New York as well with the potential of Emma Meesman. and just kind of the pieces they've added. Do you think that they have that in mind where it's okay, we're hoping that we get to a certain point in the year and these are the difference makers that will beat Minnesota or New York?
Definitely.
Hmm.
I think that you have to look at your rosters that way if you're both teams
Hmm.
because that's and I think, before that for New York, it was Vegas, right? It was like, how are we going to beat Vegas?
Hmm.
And they knew, I think Leonie Fibish was key for that because they couldn't play with Vandersloot and Sabrina on the floor together for extended stretches against Vegas. That's where they struggled. Enter Fibish into the starting lineup, and it totally changed that matchup against Vegas, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, right now, if you're Minnesota, you're thinking, okay, how do we get past New York? If you're New York, you're thinking, okay, how do we hold off Minnesota? I think for Minnesota, what is interesting and different about their roster this year is Diamond Miller. And, she's shown flashes of real production. She's obviously a much steadier and healthier rotation piece this season for Minnesota than last year when she, didn't play in the finals. And can create, right? Like there was at times where I think Minnesota could have benefited from someone who could just go create, could go get their own shot, could go get downhill. Can Diamond, excuse me, can Diamond be that off the bench for them, right?
Hmm.
And then Maria and her size, and she's been a really nice piece off the bench too.
Hmm.
And what was the biggest issue for Minnesota in the finals last year was Jonquel Jones and trying to stop her, right? Granted, Alana Smith had her back issues, which certainly played a role in the series. Um, but having another big body who you could just put on JJ, I think could be really important. So I think Maria is a really key piece for the matchup with New York for Minnesota. And then I think for New York, what we saw is in game 5, when things were going awry for them, what saved them was a really big lineup. And
Hmm.
Emma Miesemann is a piece that gives them the option of another really big lineup if they need to deploy that, right? You could essentially, you could have a lineup with John Quell, Miesemann, Phoebish, Stewie, and Cloud or Sabrina, right? And you're going to really be huge. So I think that is a key piece. And I think also, for a team like New York, they're all also thinking like we want to keep Emma Miesemann away from Minnesota, right? It's not just
Hmm.
about what she's going to do on their roster against Minnesota. It's about keeping her away from Minnesota. So yeah, right now it does feel like an arms race with these two teams.
Hmm. When it comes specifically to the Lynx, what is maybe one thing that surprised you to this point? Whether it's Nafisa Collier's impressive start to the year. I know she had a good year last year, but she's on another level this year. Maybe it's their depth. What is one thing that's kind of stood out to you for Minnesota so far?
I mean, Fee continuing to ascend definitely
Hmm.
stands out. There's no doubt Nafisa Collier is the 2025 WNBA MVP unless something strange happens.
Hmm.
As long as she's healthy and playing like this through the end of the season, I will be stunned if she's not the MVP. I think also, the play of Courtney Williams, and the way she's been able to truly lean into being a point guard for this team, to being a primary playmaker. The way Cheryl Reeve has gotten the most out of her in that role, averaging 6 assists a game, scoring a little more this season than she did last year. Um, but I think like Courtney's ability to lead the offense has been really impressive as she has just fully embraced that role in Minnesota. And I think just like the thing that's been most impressive to me is the fact that they have been this unified, well-oiled machine,
Hmm.
right? You could have looked at them last year and say, okay, you know, did they just find it for a year? Like, are all these pieces going to click the same way again? Because they brought back mostly the same team, right?
Hmm.
And instead, what they what they did is they built on it, and they've been, every bit as good as they were last year. So to me, like that's really impressive and a sign of how stable their core is.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Looking, kind of taking a step back and look at the league in totality, We talked about, Minnesota and New York being the favorites, or kind of being I would say the clear favorites to return to the finals. But is there any, you mentioned Phoenix, but people, I guess that next tier behind them, or maybe even some dark horses, who do you think could make a push once we get to the postseason?
Well, it's interesting because heading into the year, you would have said Vegas as that third team,
Yep.
right? But and maybe they found something with what they did on Sunday with Bell starting and playing very well, and Jewel coming off the bench and playing very well. We'll see if that can unlock things for them. Um, on the whole, it has just felt like it's not their year. But they still have Asia Wilson, the three-time MVP, and Jackie and Chelsea, and so I won't totally write them off in the playoffs because if they get on a groove, they have that championship pedigree, right? But I think the obvious third team right now would be Phoenix. Alyssa Thomas is playing at an MVP level. I think right now she would finish second to Fee in that voting. Uh, she's surrounded by shooting in a way she never was in Connecticut. And we haven't fully seen her, Satu, and Kalia Copper healthy for any kind of extended period of time. So curious to see that. So Phoenix, I think, and I think Indiana, you have to look at and say, okay, like if they can get Caitlin healthy, they're going to be dangerous. If Caitlin is healthy and playing at her best, they're going to be dangerous. I think
Mhm.
because her year has been so riddled with injuries, people forget that at the end of last season, she was playing like the best guard in the league. She was the only guard to be first team all WNBA. And her first 6 games this season, she was averaging more than 21 points, more than nine or right around 9 assists, and was shooting 40% from three, you know? And so if she gets back to that level with the way Kelsey's playing, with the way Aaliyah's playing, with the way Sophie Cunningham's playing, Natasha Howard started to find it, Sunday's game notwithstanding, um, and some of the depth they have this year, they're going to be dangerous.
Mhm.
They're definitely going to be a dangerous team. So I give Phoenix, Vegas, Indy puncher's chance against anybody. I also think Seattle and Atlanta are really interesting teams because if you told me they were going to face off against Vegas, Phoenix, or Indy, I'd say they could easily win a 3-game series against any of them. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle beat Vegas in a 3-game series.
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta beat Indy in a 3-game series. So I think those five teams all kind of, jockeying with each other there are interesting in a lot of ways. Um, but they're definitely a clear tier below New York and Minnesota.
Has there been anybody that's surprised you so far here early on in the season, or is there maybe not
Like,
necessarily playoff teams, but could be playoff teams or like those teams you
I,
just mentioned, but
I mean,
anybody in general?
Golden State shocked me. I
Hmm.
thought they were going to be dreadful. And first of all, they had a roster full of players who I don't think any of us had ever heard of them.
Hmm.
Like they went strictly Euro, and they didn't even they didn't have some notable draft pick come in. Their first pick of the draft didn't come this season,
Hmm.
right? It stayed overseas. So I'm stunned at how competitive they've been, and I think it's why Natalie Nakase has an outstanding chance to win Coach of the Year. I also have to say, I am, Washington, that they've been as competitive as they have been with how young their team is, has really surprised me. And then Phoenix and Atlanta have surprised me too.
Hmm.
Phoenix has been much better than I thought they would have been. I think Nate Tibbetts has done a great job
I
there.
agree.
And Atlanta's been much better.
Hmm.
Alicia Gray has had an all WNBA type season. They even though originally the bigs they signed in the offseason felt like, wait, how are BG and Bree Jones going to fit into Carl Smesco's system? But they have, and it's been really effective. So I think all those teams have surprised me thus far.
Hmm. It especially like you mentioned Atlanta. I know the Lynx just got off a loss against the Dream,
Yeah,
and that's those two players specifically, Bree Jones and BG in the paint. They just took it to Minnesota, and that's one of kind of your point what you were talking about before, size wise. That's
yeah.
one of Minnesota's downfalls, but that could definitely play a factor in the postseason because they are tough to stop in the paint with those two specifically.
Yeah.
Um,
And like Hubie Brown would always tell me the playoffs are about matchups.
mhm.
And so if you don't have, if you just happen to have a bad matchup, that can sometimes end up being the difference between, you know, getting to that next round or not, right? Like you might be better equipped to match up against the 1 seed than you are, the 2 or the 3 seed. Sometimes that happens. And in a short series, that can be dangerous. That's why that first round series is so dangerous and why seeding can matter, right? Because, a Washington, if they're the 8 seed, they're not going to beat Minnesota in
Hmm.
the first round. That's not going to happen. You know, a in Atlanta is going to go into that series, and against anybody in the first round and think, hey, we could win 2 out of 3,
Hmm.
and they could. They wouldn't be the favorites in many matchups, but like, I don't think you'd be stunned. It's a short series, so
Sure.
that's why I do think that seeding is key for New York and Minnesota.
Absolutely. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you joining once again. Looking forward to you being in Minnesota here on
Yeah,
Wednesday, and not only the rest of the season, but once we get into the postseason, we'll be here before we know it. But appreciate you
fantastic.
joining, and we'll have to chat again here sometime soon.
Sounds good, Mitchell. I appreciate you having me, and always love being in Minnesota, and can't wait to be at Target Center for this game Wednesday.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you once again to Ryan for joining the podcast. As I mentioned before we started recording, Ryan's awesome. And I think I could have talked to him for much longer than what we did, but I'm gracious of his time, gracious of him joining the podcast, and also kind of giving us some insight as to what we could expect from this, specifically with the Lynx Liberty matchup over the next couple weeks, and as well as the rest of the WNBA season and the postseason ahead. So we will hear plenty of Ryan, not only in the coming weeks, but also in the coming months once we get to the postseason. And a lot of those games are aired on ESPN. I also want to give a thank you or a shout out to our partners here at Hitting the Hardwood. If you or someone you know are interested in partnering with Hitting the Hardwood, check out our partners page on our website. You can find that link on all of our social medias. Or you can email hittingthehardwood@gmail.com. I can send you over the sponsorship levels that we do have. If those figures and levels in our sponsorship form, if they're not to your liking, we can modify things, we can adjust things, we can get creative. But let's work together. Let's help grow women's sports, and let's use our platform, my podcast here, Terry Horseman's podcast, as I mentioned before the recording with Ryan, as well as Andrew Dukowitz's live stream and his podcast. All three of us will plug your company, your business, as well as we'll put it on social media, we'll put it in our newsletter, and kind of push it out to the masses. So we want to help promote you because if you support us, we want to support you, and we want our following to support you as well. But the businesses that do are companies that do partners with us, which greatly appreciate all the support of everybody that has reached out and their willingness to partner. Pentz Homes, Fantasy Sports Evo, Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, that is one of our newer partners. Better Edge and Homage. I'll start with our kind of our top three presenting partners. Pentz Homes, as I mentioned, that is where you should go if you are buying or selling a home. You should be going to Nate Pentz and the Pentz Homes team. They should be your top choice for buyers or sellers, as I mentioned. And they're proud to support you and your home ownership goals. So you can go check out Pentz Homes, Pentz homes.com. Reach out to Nate and the team and let them get you started today. Fantasy Sports Evo, as I mentioned, Fantasy Sports Evo is a new way to play fantasy sports. That is, you bet as a team, you bet on teams, I should say, rather than players. You're not picking individual players, you're picking teams, which is a very unique way of betting, and it's very enjoyable. I have to admit, I use it regularly, not only betting on the WNBA, but other sports as well. So Fantasy Sports Evo, that is a new way to play daily fantasy sports, and it's made specifically with you in mind. If you go to Fantasy Sports Evo and you use the promo code LINKS as a first-time user, you receive a 100% deposit match plus $10 in playable credits. So go check our friends out at Fantasy Sports Evo. Then I mentioned Firehawk Construction and Remodeling. They strive to inspire people to follow their ideas. They work with respect and understanding to create a quality, tailored result. Isaac and the team at Firehawk Construction and Remodeling, they want to help you. They want to be here for you. They want to be your partner in making your building and remodeling needs come to life and your dreams come to life. So go check them out. You can find their contact information on our partners page on our website. You can give Isaac a call and you can get started with them today. But with that said, I really do appreciate you all joining. I appreciate you listening as always. I appreciate your guys' support of Hitting the Hardwood, the Hitting the Hardwood Network, all three of our podcasts, our newsletter, everything in between. We work hard during the regular season to provide you with this content, and we really appreciate the support, whether it's through our Patreon page, or just on social media, or just listening to this podcast. We appreciate all of your support. We appreciate the love. We hope that you not only are listening, maybe you're listening for the first time, but we hope that you regularly come back and you listen often and share with your friends, because we want to reach as many people as we possibly can. So with that said, thank you for joining. Thank you for listening. Enjoy these next couple weeks, because it's going to be it's peak WNBA season. It's these next, as I mentioned, few weeks are going to be really fun. So let's strap down. Let's get ready. The content will be rolling out, and we got you covered. So enjoy the games, enjoy the coverage. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time.